Good afternoon. I'm Dan DeRosa with 19 News, coming to you from our digital desk. We're going to take you live out to California, where we're going to get an update from the FBI and federal prosecutors into the California wildfires and whether or not they were intentionally set. Let's take you live out to LA.
United States Attorney in the Central District of California. I'm joined by Akil Davis, the Assistant Director in charge of FBI Los Angeles, Special Agent in charge Amir Asai, Assistant United States Attorneys Ian Yanello and Kadar Bhatia. We're here today to announce the filing of a federal criminal charge against an individual who earlier this month recklessly operated a drone that collided with a firefighting aircraft. On January 9th, the Pacific Palisades fires were raging. Firefighters were desperately trying to stop the destruction being caused by the fires and save lives. Critical to those efforts were firefighting aircraft that were conducting all-out assaults in the areas surrounding the wildfires. Contrary to law and basic common sense, some individuals were recklessly operating drones around the firefighting relief efforts. They were operating drones in areas specifically being used by firefighting aircrafts conducting assaults against the fires. Today, we announce the filing of a federal criminal charge against one individual who is engaged in that conduct, a Los Angeles area man who launched a drone, lost sight of it, and that drone eventually collided with a Super Scooper firefighting aircraft, one of the most important firefighting aircrafts in the firefighting arsenal. After an intense and in-depth investigation by the FBI, federal prosecutors today filed a criminal charge against Peter Tripp Ackerman. Mr. Ackerman has agreed to accept responsibility and plead guilty to one count of unsafe operation of an unmanned aircraft. As part of his plea agreement, Mr. Ackerman had admitted that he acted recklessly, and his conduct posed an imminent threat to firefighting crews. Once he enters his guilty plea, Mr. Ackerman will face up to 1 year in federal prison. The ultimate sentence imposed will be up to a federal judge at the time of sentencing. As part of his plea agreement, Mr. Ackerman has agreed to pay full restitution to the government of Quebec, which supplied the plane, as well as an aircraft repair company that repaired the aircraft. That amount is estimated to be around $65,000. Mr. Ackerman has agreed to complete 150 hours of community service that is directed at wildfire relief efforts here in Southern California. In documents filed this morning, Mr. Ackerman admitted to serious facts and serious conduct, including that he recklessly operated the drone, and that drone posed an imminent safety hazard to the crew of the Super Scooper airplane. Mr. Ackerman admitted that on January 9th, while the Pacific Palisades fire still raged, he went to the top of a parking garage at the 3rd Street Promenade in Santa Monica. He launched a drone from that location and flew it around where the wildfires were raging in an effort to observe the damage. The drone flew about 1.5 miles until he lost sight of the drone. While he was flying the drone, it collided with the Super Scooper carrying 2 crew members who were attempting to fight the blaze. The impact caused a 3x6 hole in the left wing of the aircraft. The plane was able to land safely, and eventually maintenance crew began to repair the aircraft. The aircraft was out of commission for several days while we were in the middle of the wildfires. For approximately 5 days, it was not being able to be used by fire department and other crews. The fire department wasn't able to use that plane to fight the fires for approximately 5 days. Flying drones during times of emergency poses an extreme threat to our firefighting personnel who are out there trying to help people. Flying drones during an emergency compromises the ability of police and our firefighters to conduct emergency operations. As this case demonstrates, if you fly a drone around wildfires and you do so recklessly, law enforcement is going to find you and we're going to hold you accountable. I want to thank our firefighters, our first responders who are out there on the line every day trying to protect the public and do their jobs. I want to thank the FBI, the Department of Transportation, OIG, the FAA, and CAL FIRE, as well as the LA Fire Department for their partnership in bringing this important case. A message here is deterrence to the public that, again, do not fly drones in areas where firefighters are raging. And I also want to thank the AUSAs who are responsible for the prosecution, Assistant U.S. Attorneys Kadar Bhatia, Ian Yanello, and our partners, again, at the FBI for all their good work. With that, I'll turn it over to Assistant Director in Charge, Akil Davis.
Good morning. My name's Akil Davis. I'm the Assistant Director in Charge of the FBI's Los Angeles Field Office. We're here today to talk about a defendant taking responsibility for flying a drone that collided with a firefighting aircraft. While that could have resulted in catastrophe, the plane landed safely. Regardless of the intentions of the pilot, our investigators have drilled down on this case for approximately 2 weeks. I'd like to really thank our teams at LAX, along with their partners at LAFD and CAL FIRE, who worked on this investigation in order to bring the subject to justice. They used every investigative avenue and worked with the public and private sector to get to the bottom of this case. And again, I am very proud of their hard work. There's no evidence at this time that the defendant intentionally caused this collision. However, flying drones in a restricted area could cause a catastrophe. Going forward, we're going to be dealing with more drones, and the likelihood of a disastrous result will increase. As you all know, we have World Cup coming up to the Southland. We have the Super Bowl followed on that, and then culminating in 2028 with the Olympics. All of those events will bring significant drone activity in which the FBI stands at the ready to investigate those crimes with our counter-UAS, our counter-drone task force, and our ground intercept teams. The FAA has very strict guidelines about registering drones and where drones can be flown. The onus is on the pilot. If firefighters are putting out a fire with aircraft, that should be a clue. As CAL FIRE has said, if you fly, we can't. Meaning they cannot use their most sophisticated technique to attack these wildfires. Lack of common sense and ignorance of your duty as a drone pilot will not shield you from criminal penalties. Please respect the law, respect the FAA restrictions, and respect our firefighters. Thank you, and I'll turn it back over to United States Attorney Joe McNally.
We'll take a couple of questions. Yes, sir? Yeah, as I indicated, the drone collided with a firefighting aircraft, a Super Scooper. And when that plane landed, maintenance crews observed the drone wreckage in parts of the plane. We were able to, and I say we, our law enforcement partners who I mentioned earlier, work together to take that wreckage, trace that back to a specific drone, and then we work to identify that individual. It required a substantial amount of effort, search warrants, other things that we do typically in cases. It was a complex process, but we were able to identify that person, and anybody else who engages in that conduct should have confidence that we'll identify them too.
Was the
Yes, sir. Yeah, my understanding was, like a lot of individuals, he was curious about what was happening in that area. If we go back to, January 9th, the roads in those areas were closed. It was restricted area, and people wanted to see, for a variety of reasons, the carnage that was happening in Southern California. And my understanding and my take from the case is that was his intent. The problem with that starts off as curious conduct is, with the amount of firefighting planes you have in that area dropping so they can get water in the Pacific Ocean, it interferes with those operations. And so it's not the time to fly drones anytime that we have these emergencies in Southern California.
Can you elaborate on that?
Yes, ma'am. So my understanding is that under FAA regulations, you have to register your drone under certain circumstances. I don't have any information as to whether or not he had a license or whether he would have needed one under those circumstances.
Can you elaborate on the reaction of the suspect when he was contacted by you guys?
Well, I'll highlight the fact that he has agreed to plead guilty and accept responsibility, which I think is important here. He was ultimately contacted in connection with the conduct, and we've reached an agreement where he's agreed to accept responsibility through a plea where he does face prison time. He's agreed to pay full restitution, and he has agreed to commit himself approximately 150 hours of community service in wildfire relief.
Dan DeRosa with 19 News. We're going to wrap up this news conference as they take a few more questions. Bottom line, someone who thought that they would put up their drone to look at some of the damage in the California wildfires lost control of it after a mile and a half. It just left. He didn't have control of it. It got out of his range. It ends up colliding with what's known as a super scooper aircraft that was in from Canada to help fight the fires. They found pieces of that drone when it landed in the wing, the hole that it put in the wing. That man, Peter Tripp Ackerman, has now decided to plead guilty to one count of unsafe operation of an unmanned aircraft. Faces up to a year in prison, but ultimately also has to pay $65,000 for the repair of that plane. And you heard that plane was then out of commission for a few days. Think about the desperate need that they had for as many firefighting tools as they could get. And when you take something like a super scooper plane, we've all seen the planes that dive down, they suck up water from the ocean and then go out and drop that over some of the fires. When you lose that major piece of firefighting equipment for a number of days, that can impact the entire effort. If we have any other breaking news, it'll be right here on our digital platforms. Otherwise, look for our 3.5 hours of news and first alert weather to start at 3 o'clock on Channel 19. Until then, I'm Dan DeRosa with 19 News. Have a great afternoon.
19 News is everywhere. Download our CTV apps and